Welcome to Native Calgarian. Today is the 100th episode. Today is July 12th. I didn't ever think I would get here, that's for sure. So, Oki, Naganago, Mako Chase Chistakomaki. My name is Red Thunder Woman. My married English name is Michelle Robinson, and I use she and her pronouns. Native Calgarian is being recorded on the lands of the Niitsitapi, which is the Blackfoot Confederacy. The Blackfoot south of the imposed U.S.-Canadian border are the Blackfeet, and north of the border are the Siksika, Gunai, and Bagani of the Confederacy. These lands are now Treaty 7, signed September 22, 1877, with signatures that include the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Stoney Nakoda, Wesley, Chiniki, Bearspaw Nations, and the Dene from Tsuut'ina Nation. I acknowledge all First Nation, Métis, Inuit status and non-status across Turtle Island as the keepers of these lands. All non-Indigenous are treaty partners with the government signing on your behalf. I honor the Blackfoot. I was born in Calgary, or in Blackfoot Mohkinstsis, as Michelle Elliott, a very English name which has afforded me privilege in an English colonial world. My mother is Northern Slavey Dene, or Sahtu Dene, and my Indian Act and Post status card by the Canadian government says Yellowknives Dene. My father is so Canadian. I am a daughter of the Mayflower and a daughter of the American Revolution while having an Indian Act and Post status card. I acknowledge my Dene lineage and that I was born in Calgary, but my family is not part of the Treaty 7 signatories. My Dene lineage roots me in the land of the Hare people, also called the Great Bear Lake people in Treaty 11. I'm a native to Turtle Island, and my Dene nation is a visitor to this area called Clincho Tine Indahe in Sahtu Dene, meaning many horse town, named after the Calgary Stampede. Land acknowledgements are critical for acknowledging your role as a treaty partner and telling Indigenous people that we care about you. So my humblest apologies to Blackfoot elders and language keepers as I try to learn proper pronunciation. Any mistakes or misinterpretations will be on me. I encourage questions so that misunderstandings can be cleared up as soon as possible. I do not speak on behalf of all Indigenous, but I share what I know as I walk down my red road. If you're experiencing emotional distress after hearing anything we talk about today, call the First Nation and Inuit Hope for Wellness helpline at 1-855-242-3310. It is toll-free, open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And non-Indigenous, there are distress center lines in your area as well. My Patreon account is Native Calgarian, where you can pledge and support. Thank you to the previous donors for showing your support. If you value listening and can afford to give, thank you. For those that cannot afford to give but listen in, I'd love to hear from you at nativeyyc@gmail.com, where you can send in your comments and your questions. We also have a YouTube channel, and I'd love to have you to subscribe if you're a YouTuber. For podcasts, we're on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. And I'd like to give a shout out to my super loyal donors of Adam and Alexandria, Beatrice, Ben, Beth, Brian, Kat, Celine, Christina, Crystal, Diana, Jana, Jenny, Jocelyn, Judy, Karen, Kathy, Kenna, Leah, Marisa, Melissa, Natalie, Nathan, Rebecca, The Sprawl, Shara, Sharon, Tammy, Tiffany, Vanessa, and Veronica. So I'm hitting quite a milestone today, so I thought I'd do that fun thing of, recording and then also going live. So I'm just trying to give some waves to Mervyn and Diane who are watching them live. I show that I have a few people watching right now, so I appreciate all of you. Thank you. And as this is my 100th anniversary, with my podcast, I have a lot of guests. And when I don't have guests, I end up ranting about politics in general. And it's been a while since it's just been me, so I'll just try to give an update on a few things that, from messages that people have been asking me about hate mail and what to do when you get that. And then a few other things that are on the go right now. So there's been a lot of stuff happening, a really big movement that I'm really excited about with the Washington Redskins and the Edmonton Eskimos. For a long time, there has been campaigns to, I'm not your mascot, and to try to change the name of some of these really racist sporting events. And the reason why this is important, and for anyone who has paid attention to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's conversation on media, it's also in the 231 Calls to Justice about media portrayal of Indigenous people. And I want to give a shout out to one of the folks I was so lucky to have on my show, Jesse Went. And he talks about media misrepresentation, and there's a really great YouTube video of him talking about this. So anyway, with that bigger picture of, racist caricatures of us, or, lying, basically, a misrepresentation about who we are and what we are. And for me personally, we lost a really amazing, talented, beautiful young Anuk around Christmas time, and one of her last retweets was actually talking about that bigger picture of changing the name when it came to the Edmonton Eskimos, because it is a misrepresentation of that terminology, and it is considered a slur here. Because for those who do not know, if you're not on my Twitter, if you're not on my Facebook, you might not be seeing some of the things that we're sharing. And I try to share on a pretty regular basis posts that goes around about tags that Eskimos were given by the Canadian government. So today, I live under the Indian Act, so according to the Canadian government, I'm an Indian. And according to the Canadian government, Inuit were Eskimos, and they were given little dog tags that they had to show when they were out and about. And that, of course, is racist and problematic, and they used to shoot their dogs for taking off, and there's an awful history when it comes to the Canadian government and the Inuit. So the Inuit obviously are reclaiming who they are. When I was growing up, Northwest Territories did not include none of it, and the Inuit worked really hard to have that inclusion and that self-governance. So these are things that are really important to be talking about when talking about why Edmonton Eskimos is an inappropriate name, and why Washington Redskins is an inappropriate name. So, and because of the Black Lives Matter movement that's been happening, a lot of folks know money. Money is the only thing capitalists care about. So some of the sponsors that are supposed to have these diversity and inclusion policies realize that by having racist names, basically they are not following their own inclusion policies. So a lot of the sponsors started to pull their funding and saying, we will not be showcasing racist caricatures, we will not be showcasing racist names, and the Washington Redskins in the next 24 hours are going to be releasing their new name. And as well, the Edmonton Eskimos, because of public pressure, they put out a statement that I quoted, and I said, that's an awful lot of words to say that we need anti-racist training. And it's true, they do need anti-racist training to not understand this issue. It is really clear that, the corporate offices are not interested in learning about Indigenous issues and reconciliation. So as a result, they were like, no, we did our outreach and it's totally cool. We are totally keeping this name because it's so cool, even though the public and, the Inuit are saying the opposite. Nathan Obed, he's come out, he came out years ago, and, he keeps coming out almost yearly talking about why Eskimos is a problematic name. So he came out again and talked about why that's a problematic name. And the Edmonton Eskimos are really getting a lot of pressure to change their name. And of course it's coming from sponsors, because the public wasn't good enough, obviously, and neither were their fans. So, and now for those who might not know, if you see me posting on Twitter or Facebook, I try to give the context that as Indigenous people, I'm Satu Dene. So the Edmonton Eskimos can have all the Dene in the world saying, no, this is totally cool, it's awesome, this name just represents. But Satu Dene is not Inuit. My auntie once, I asked her the question, what's the difference between Dene and Inuit? And she said, well, obviously the bigger picture of language and ways of life, but the tree line was a big one. The tree line. We lived inside the tree line, they lived on the outside of the tree line. So for anyone to be getting a Dene's point of view on the term Inuit, or Eskimo is actually not fair, and there's that bigger picture of anti-racism, understanding and training, and this is the root of where the lateral violence and such comes from, where if you don't understand what anti-racism is, what racism is, then you are the last person that should be giving your opinion. And I would have been that problematic person. My daughter was born in 2007. Even 2007 was really when I started to understand anti-racism work. So the Washington Redskins, Edmonton Eskimos changing their name, I didn't think I would see that in my lifetime. And I'm really happy that it might actually happen here, not just in my lifetime, but like in the next month, in the next 24 hours, Washington Redskins for sure. On Twitter, Native Twitter has been calling out Alyssa Milano for years on this issue about trying to get her, because she's one of the co-owners of the Washington Redskins, to, understand how racist it was. And she kept ignoring us. And worse, I think she even posed once in a headdress or some kind of native outfit that was like not native, and a mocking of us. Again, back to that representation. So it's really good to see this happening, and there being a little more accountability on that. This whole week, racism was a topic of conversation at City Hall. And I was actually, I didn't watch any of it. I didn't watch any of it because, as always, the city decides we're going to have conversations about racism last minute in a, last ditch effort. And those of us who have jobs or responsibilities or engagements have already committed to other things. So I was actually really disappointed. But I was really hurt when they finally wrapped up, and they had this, one reporter, and she was reporting about, what was being said and what was being recorded by the counselors. And for those who don't know, Sean Shu is, the representation of Chinese on the board, and he was part of the diversity team for the Calgary police. And he is one of those problematic racialized people that's never had any anti-racism training whatsoever. So as a result, he was the one who put out the statement basically saying, there's no racism really, not really, in Calgary, after hearing like 3 days of, hundreds of people actually, sharing their deep trauma, their deep pain, their stories of racism. This is what they had, with Sean Shu basically completely gaslighting what they said, saying, it's not that bad. I'm Chinese, it's fine. And of course, that's exactly why I'm glad I didn't testify, because had I put in my 5 minutes, I'm sure it would have went in one ear and not the other. And actually it was proven with some of the other counselors' points as well, because they said, things like, I thought I understood, but obviously I didn't. And like, I literally ran because this is an issue. I came with solutions, with the solutions that all of our ancestors have done, and all of the folks that are working right now across Canada on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the National Inquiry, they're doing that work. The work is done. It's there. The Ralph Report, that's another example. We've had numerous reports when it comes to child welfare. I'm trying so hard to wave on this, and I don't know why. I find it really hard. Oh, well. Sorry. Hi, Jean. Hi, Rando. Hi, Matthew. So I just wanted to, bring you in the camera. I hope you don't mind. I don't even know if I can get this to work. See if I can get this to work. Can't bring Jean on camera. Sorry about that. So anyway, bigger picture. Yeah, there's racism in Calgary, and we've tried, I've been talking about it for years. I can name you names. Jackie Crazy Bull, Colton Crowshoe, Joey English, and the list goes on. And unfortunately, we can now add a new name as of June 29th to this list as well. So first of all, I want to say my deepest condolences to the Goodeye family, to Ursula. There was a Calgary Herald article that came out, and in it, Nathaniel Goodeye, 35, was found dead in a northeast home, potentially days after he was killed. The police found his body in the Margate Close in Northeast, so my area that I've been part of. And his mother hadn't heard from him in 6 days, and they're not releasing anything. And, you know, obviously she's feeling very hurt and confused. So, first and foremost, my deepest condolences to the Goodeye family and to all at Treaty 7 who knew the Goodeye family. I was super disappointed to read that this had happened again in really close proximity in my neighborhood. And, you know, here we have Sean Shu, the diversity team, actually denying really racism. And we have another name to add to the list of people that we have to mourn and seek justice for. So, you know, we'll be giving our thoughts and prayers to the Goodeye family as they navigate this system. And I hope to goodness that there's some justice for that family, and we'll follow their lead. And that's what anyone who's listening, who will listen later to the recording, you know, the best way to support families of Indigenous folks is to follow their lead and listen to what they have to say, and don't listen to the reports that are in mainstream media or by the police, because unfortunately they change it to their story, not necessarily to what the truth is, and certainly not from the point of view of the family. And I say that as somebody who has, unfortunately, years of experience of listening to other family members tell their story, and the media not printing it properly, or worse, you know, creating a new narrative, and that's been really problematic. So speaking of which, Above the Law is a new documentary on the CBC, and it basically exposes 2 stories about police accountability here in the city of Calgary. I did notice they did not even mention the word Indigenous. They did not talk about the Indigenous perspective in any way, shape, or form. That doesn't negate the documentary, but what it does show is that it's always that, you know, we can talk about racism through a black context, we can talk about police accountability in certain contexts, but thankfully, because we have a white person and, you know, the son of a police officer murdered, that I know this will get a lot more exposure than what had happened previously on some of the other cases that I have spoken about. And if it wasn't for our native media, you know, really talking about some of the cases that we have, people may not even know about, you know, some of the other family members, because unfortunately we don't get the coverage that we should in the mainstream media. So here we are, and thank you for that. Congratulations on my 100th episode. For those who are watching live, thank you. And I appreciate those who are tuning in. Always appreciate that. So anyway, a lot of conversations with new activists and new people interested in politics asking me about hate mail. You know, what do you do when you get hate mail? And unfortunately, for those who kind of put out their thoughts, their opinions, hate mail is something that is unfortunately normal. And I think anyone from the LGBTQ2+ community, any racialized community, actually does get hate mail on a regular basis. So especially on social media, when you get it on social media, the best thing that you can do is find that profile immediately and copy the link to that profile. And then if it is a comment, you can actually find the link to that comment. And I know this sounds like something the police would do, but they actually don't. So you do have to do this work. So you take screenshots, link it to these screenshots, because the police don't take photos, they don't take screenshots, they don't take links. And you have to do all the prep work. So the prep work, you know, showing profile pics, showing Twitter links, Facebook links, you know, Instagram links, whatever social media you're getting attacked on. And you start collecting that, and I collect it in a few different ways. I always have an album on Facebook that is hidden. It's completely locked. And I do that so that I can keep adding photos, I can keep adding links, and I can basically build my photo case. And then once I have that, I send basically what's in my album, only I copy and paste it so that it's in like a Gmail, and I send it to the Calgary Police. Calgary police won't necessarily do anything. Basically, what they can do is just start building a file so that if and when something really grotesquely happens, we have a long list of possible suspects that it could possibly be. If it is an actual death threat where, it says, I am going to come to your house and kill you, then the police are supposed to actually investigate that. And sometimes they do, and sometimes, they'll go visit the house of whoever it is. So, you can do that. But 9 times out of 10, it's not a legitimate, death threat, or even hate, for that matter. We have such a small classification of what hate is in the Canadian Criminal Code, and I'm sure that has a lot to do with the fact that the Indian Act is embedded in our Canadian Constitution. So it's really hard to be talking about what hate mail is or what racism is when it's literally embedded in our Constitution. I hope that helps people interested in what to do when you get hate mail or when you get, death threats, but it happens. And, most of them are people who aren't legitimate people, actually. It's just trolls getting paid by some, Republican-based troll or mercenary group that gets paid, whatever. That happens. It's part of it. So, whatever. It is what it is. So today is the 12th, but yesterday was the 11th. And yesterday was kind of a big day because in Alberta, we have something called Bill 1 that's become law. Now, we should have never had this bill become law, but here we are. Alberta votes Conservative and believes that's the best party that's out there, and as a result, everybody loses their, pensions, their rights to a fair, equitable wage. I mean, the list goes on and on. I could go on all day about how crappy the UCP is. I knew this when they were running federally, when Jason Kenney was a federal minister. I knew the shady stuff he did as an immigration minister. I had people tell me that when he first got elected, 2000, whenever, if that, maybe, 2000, would have been 2000-ish, 2011 maybe, when he was immigration minister, that he just took the list of, those who had applied from, basically India, Pakistan, anyone who was brown, and just wiped the slate clean and said, oh, we're going to start over. So that's what they did. And that was kind of the start of me knowing that, okay, so Jason Kenney doesn't like brown people. Got it. And what then I seen and I learned throughout the course of some of the nonprofit work that I had done is that a lot of the nonprofit agencies here in Canada are solely based in Christian values. The Calgary Catholic Immigration Services, the YMCA stands for, Youth Christian Men's Association or Women's Association, but the Christian part is the key component. So I found out when the Syrian refugees came, 90% of Syrians are Muslim or non, and only 10% were Christian. But the ones that were coming here were 50% Christian. And what that does is that just upholds the, Christian supremacy, the white supremacy that was embedded in the Canadian Constitution, in the Canadian law, the Alberta law, that bigger picture. It was all Christian based when they came over here and, stole Indigenous lands and broke all the treaties. So of course, all the new immigrants that they bring in are Christian based, so that way we have a continuation. So we have all of these, Christian organizations, nonprofits that just uphold Christianity and continue the displacement of Indigenous, our lands, and go on and so forth. So, a lot of the approvals that came from the Canadian government when Jason Kenney was immigration minister were solely based in Christian values and Catholic folks. And so that brings us to today. So today we have Bill 1. And Bill 1 is this law that is specifically targeting any protesters of the Wet'suwet'en. That's why it was created. When the Wet'suwet'en lands were invaded a second time, and we had protests, we had, blocked roads and trains across the country. And as a result, this upset all the Canadians, and they went and made laws, and Conservatives made the Bill 1. And it's an unconstitutional law to basically take away our rights and deem anything they want. It's not specific what is public infrastructure. And then once they've decided that there's a protest somewhere happening that they don't like, they can invoke this bill as a reason to come break up the protest and move forward. So a lot of people see the gravity of Bill 1, but I'm not going to lie, the biggest upset that I had about it was that the protest that we had yesterday completely erased the Indigenous truth. They did, and I'll read it to you. So this is what they wrote on their Facebook page. This bill, now law, is being challenged and affects all Albertans who choose to exercise their rights of freedom and peacefully assemble. More alarmingly, disproportionately affect groups who do not have access to legislative or corporate halls of power. Are we okay with having Bill 1 replaced through other methods when it comes over court, blah, blah, blah. Political structures should serve us, not work to perpetuate many unjust systemic issues in our province. Notice they've never said racism or Indigenous yet. This time should be nothing short of Albertans rediscovering the strength we hold, and we come together as citizens to take actions and address crises that affect us all. We recognize the deep importance of inclusion and solidarity as a part of a legitimate social and political change. If you have something to say, we'd love to have you as a co-host as well, set you up with a speaking slot, accommodate any other cultural requirements during the rally. Just message Animal Rebellion or AB Can Forward. We call on all Albertans who value their rights and freedoms of expression and peaceful assembly to join us. And of course, they went on to COVID-19 protocols. So they did reach out to me and ask me if I wanted to speak. So I said, okay. But I had read through, like, the folks who put this together is AB Can Forward, Animal Extinction, Climate Change Coalition at the University of Alberta, Raging Grannies, Reboot Alberta. And, like, these are folks who typically have zero Indigenous people in their groups or speak to us with any type of understanding of Canadian Indigenous relations. The opposite, I can actually tell you instances of racism that I've experienced from some of these groups. So I was surprised they asked me to speak. Got some messages. It was very clear there was some problems actually with the organization of it, and I didn't go public with that because, I wanted to support the message. But while I was there, it was very clear to me that there was hardly any Indigenous people. I could only find one other person who was a speaker, and then one guy who had a full flag, and I asked him to come join me. And so to the folks that are listening, if you can't even bring Indigenous people to support you in your rally, what does that say? It says that it's not a safe place for Indigenous people. So that's why they don't come. And I'll tell you some examples that happened. So when I took the mic, I was pretty direct with everybody that was there. It was really clear it was mainly union people that were there. Acknowledged my dad's local because they're on strike, and although my dad's retired, so it's a little different. But basically these were people who are the nurses that apprehend our children. These are the social workers that apprehend our children, and they're Notley supporters. And the thing about being a Notley supporter is that, I have showcased all the time that when she came to Pride and started screaming, "Build that pipe," after we had one of the members of Voices do this incredible land acknowledgement, and not just a member of Voices, I mean a founder, a Blackfoot Confederate member, this, not just that, I think he's descendant of one of the Treaty 7 signatories. And here comes Rachel Notley screaming, "Build that pipe, build that pipe." We've had this up for at least 2 years now. This, instance, no acknowledgement whatsoever. The Wet'suwet'en, when they were invaded the first time, that it was Notley's government that was in charge. John Horgan in charge of the BC one. So everybody is like, oh yeah, we freaking love the NDP. Just seen, what's his name? Jagmeet Singh and Leah Gazin, who's a MP for Winnipeg Centre, go to Ganawage territory to mark the 30th anniversary of the siege. And you know, people were super excited to have them there. But again, like, no leadership from them calling out John Horgan or Rachel Notley for the harms perpetuated against Indigenous people, specifically the Wet'suwet'en, with the expansion that they have going on. And, you know, that just seems to go in one ear and out the other. So I really tried to focus on personal responsibility. Haha! Guess what I found out? Some white supremacist wearing like a, you know, MAGA hat, Make America Great Again, was walking through the crowd, and everybody was so busy looking at him and recording it, they completely missed my point of view. And I was really direct. I was telling people about the new documentary that was, well, I don't actually think I referenced it, but I specifically talked about how, you know, we have missing and murdered Indigenous families in the city, and that we need the police to be investigating it equally and fairly. I know that was the gist of what I had said. And I know that just went in one ear and not the other, and I just don't know how to connect with the regular Canadian on this issue, that there isn't equality. And that's why I've been so strong on talking about defunding the police, because we can't have justice. Like, if Colton Crowshoe's murderer is out there, Jackie Crazybull's murderer is out there, Joey English's murderer is out there, and everybody's A-okay with that, everybody's A-okay with our children being apprehended, then you're not my ally. And you're certainly not woke. And you're certainly not going to have more Indigenous people show up your rallies. So these are, like, there's a huge disconnect there. One of the Raging Grannies came up to me, and she really wanted to, she said to me, oh, we want to have more people of color. We want to have more Indigenous people. And I'm like, yeah, I couldn't agree more. And she was going to go right after this rally to some book club about white fragility. And I just can't emphasize it enough to folks. Like, you know, if you don't know how to talk to Indigenous people, I have like messages. I have a really recent one from somebody who was like, you know, I want to be a good ally, but I don't know how to. But she took what she had said so personally, but it was really clear she was talking about Alberta. This whole message from this event is all Alberta based. So people don't see themselves as, you know, colonizers, settlers. They don't see themselves as treaty partners. So they totally don't understand Indigenous issues. And it's so clear in the messaging that, you know, nothing short of Albertans rediscovering their strength. You mean, you know, treaty partners understanding that they have an obligation to Indigenous people, that they have an obligation to the land, that they have an obligation to the treaty as partners. These are messages that are not getting through to these so-called leaders. And, you know, and that is the problem. You know, I've had a book club for over 4 years, and half of the folks that are a part of this would have never come to one of my, you know, conversations. Not even one to try to understand why we're so far apart on our language and our conversation about this. Even though in theory we should be, you know, on the same team of social justice, political change, climate change, in theory, but they want to take our voices away. And that's how it's always worked, that it has to be, you know, this organization leading it, as opposed to saying, no, Ariel Deranger is clearly leading this conversation, let her speak. Nope, it has to be the union head or the union guy or the, you know, fake organization that's run by unions that has to be the leader on this, when it's not them. It's never been them. It's not even been me. I mean, I'm new to this compared to the decades of other Indigenous people talking about the problems of the planet. So we really are really far apart on this when it comes to that bigger goal that they really want is for us to come together. But when I'm, you know, having a Wet'suwet'en rally, you guys are back in Rachel Notley and her union signs that say, build that pipe. Yeah, we're nowhere close. You know, nobody's coming to the Sisters in Spirit vigils. Why? Like, they're every October 4th. Every one. So we have a huge disconnect here. But I do have a new ally, a really good one too. So some of you may have been hearing about Dr. Zaidi in the news. And Dr. Zaidi was originally with the UCP. And I always tell people who are like, wow, he should have known better, because I've seen some of that gaslighting comments. I always laugh, because it's like, okay, well, first, where are you coming from? Because if you believe in evidence-based politics, then why aren't you voting Liberal, first and foremost? Because the NDP have always just, gone with union organizations and all the rest of it. Oh yeah, this is one last thing I gotta say about this rally. So I didn't even hear it, but as soon as I was done speaking, I left. And the next people up, I guess, were just bootlicking the Calgary police, like, oh man, you guys are so fabulous. Which, Nathaniel Goodeye, Joey English, Jackie Crazy Bull, and just names that I can go on and on for. Like, yeah, screw them, right guys? Yeah, those cops, they're fabulous. And that's not even including the two folks that were on this Above the Law CBC documentary. You're not watching that stuff. You're not watching actual police accountability that needs to be done. So anyway, I guess they were bootlicking and applauding. And it's like, Black Lives Matter is literally about police accountability. So you can't pretend that you're in any way anti-racism. Anyway, if you're like totally marginalizing Indigenous lives and Black lives. It's just the truth. Sorry, folks. So Dr. Zaidi, at least, is trying to understand this whole issue about his, settler colonial relationship. And when he was with the UCP and gaslit by folks who were like, oh, well, he should have known better than being part of the UCP. I'll say this, all Albertans like to identify as conservatives, me as well. Because we all like to think we're fiscally responsible. We all like to think that we are, very kind people, that we speak with measured tone. I don't know anyone who isn't. So anyway, he got kicked out of the UCP, or no, he resigned. I apologize. He resigned on his own will because the speechwriter for the UCP right now is basically an Indian residential school genocide denier. And Dr. Zaidi's like, no, you can't deny what happened at Indian residential schools. So he's working really hard at trying to create, he did create a petition. I shared it. I hope people signed it. I'd like folks to not just sign it, but share it. Not seeing the traction I wish I would see on it. So if you're hearing this, watching this, please look for it, Dr. Zaidi's petition about Indian residential schools. And it's on my page as well. I'll leave yet another link when I air this, or when this podcast is edited and goes up. And so share it. And he's trying to find an Indigenous lawyer to look over it. And, I've kind of given him my point of view, and other folks have given a point of view. And so we're going to have a meeting to try to convince municipalities, provinces, so, your councillors, your MLAs, your MPs to, understand. You can't deny what happened at Indian residential schools. So thank God we have somebody who sees the gravity of this. And because he's in the Muslim community, I think it will be really positive, because we need really strong advocates in that community to talk about these issues. So my hope is that we'll go somewhere, because clearly in the non-Indigenous Canadian non-Muslim group, they're just like, let's have some dimmies, and not really caring. Well, they're caring, but that's a whole other topic. So for those who don't know the joke, Karen has become kind of a, white woman using her privilege to marginalize Black voices, mainly Indigenous voices, and that's just been going everywhere. And I'm enjoying it, I'm not gonna lie, because literally what I just told you, this one particular event is just filled with people who, are so unaware of this gravity of what we're going through. I just shared a really great video, and it's a Black man just saying the difference between race, not being racist and anti-racism. And it's that afterwards, oh my God, can you believe that guy in the mega hat, that he came here and he was like doing this and, you know, being Karens basically. And instead of doing something more and being like, hey, dude, not cool. And anyway, so the hate crimes unit of the Calgary Police were there to the folks that I know, and they came and I guess they intervened. But they did it, and this is the thing, the new activists and such, they don't get it. Because this was happening and they're so busy focused on this guy, what I was saying about police accountability and what's happening with Indigenous lives, that was just like, boom, that's totally lost. We're not going to talk about what social workers do or nurses do. We're not going to talk about what police do. No, these are the guys who are here to protect us white people, right? So that's, my message was completely lost, so I might as well not have spoke at all. But at least I have my podcast, so maybe something will be heard there. Anyway, so I'm hoping a few non-Indigenous folks will, you know, do some work, do some white fragility, settler fragility, maybe sign a petition, maybe even friggin' share it. Imagine that. That would be amazing. And yeah, go just beyond that. I hope that people start seeing their role as settlers, their role as, you know, perpetuating this. You know, I get a kick out of realtors especially, because they're like, let's sell that house, let's sell this lot. And it's like, yeah, let's sell stolen land, because you guys all fall for this banking system, this capitalist system. So you're going to steal the land and then make people pay mortgages so that people who pay mortgages think that they actually have an ownership of land. This is like, it's such a disconnect between Canadian and Indigenous ways of thinking there. So anyway, so I wanted to just go over those things. I hope that, you know what to do if you get some hate mail, that's for sure. And I hope that you start following the case of Nathaniel Goodeye, because that's going to be something that I'm going to be trying to raise awareness to, based off of what the family wants and their direction, of course. Go from there. And yeah, so all these organizations, AB Can Forward, Animal Extinction, Climate Change Action Coalition, Raging Grannies, Reboot Alberta, bloody hell, I hope you read White Fragility. And I really hope that you consider understanding what oppression is, because these are, it is clear to me that when people say to me, oh, we really want, you know, folks like us to be a part of Raging Grannies, well, it is very clear you don't understand the whole pyramid of white male, you know, white women, you know, immigrant men and black men, and then down at the very, very bottom are Indigenous women, Indigenous Two-Spirit, who are in complete and utter poverty because you stole our lands. We live under the Indian Act, which is sexist and racist. We don't get dollar-to-dollar anything, funding, wage, nothing. And then you wonder why we're at the bottom, and then you wonder why people can't show up at this. Like, even I had to spend $2 on parking in order to go to this, and nobody, you know, gives you money for that. And so we're expecting like elders to show up to these events when they don't necessarily have capacity to. And there's a million other things going on, and COVID-19 is happening, and I'm not gonna lie, there was no mask given to me, you know. I was on the call, so I kind of forgot, but it was in the back of my van, so I feel bad because I'm the first person to talk about emergency fatigue, and it's something that we're all going through right now, where, you know, we try to be diligent in our hand washing routines and our face mask wearing routines and our limiting to other people. But I'm starting to feel like, but I need to hug people. So when people want to hug, you know, I give it to them, even though we're in COVID-19 and we should be practicing social distancing. But it's really hard because he's like mentally and physically, we need to hug each other. So yeah, but wear your mask, 6 feet, social distancing, washing your hands. I am trying really hard. I still haven't got my nails done. I don't know if and when I will. I need to go to the dentist, but I've been delaying it because, again, I don't know how to do all of this. Like, I absolutely need to get my neck and back massaged and go see a chiropractor. And I went and seen a chiropractor the other day, and trying to listen to my lawyer on my car accident, all of those things. Like, it's hard. It's hard to balance it all. And I don't know what the right answers are, but I know individually they're different for everybody. So anyway, just encourage you to try, because that's the only way that we can do this. Anyway, Indigenous have been talking about our issues, our traumas in reports, commissions, public hearings, just so it can be regularly disregarded. Clearly, we have it on record now in the Calgary City Hansard, their notes. No more. Honor our words. Honor the treaties. Listen to politicians and their policies and platforms. If they don't recognize marginalized in their budget with Gender Equity Plus budgets, if they're cutting violence prevention programs and services, Indigenous education, uterus health choices, gay straight alliances, know that your vote to that party directly impacts marginalized people negatively. Demand that they implement the Truth and Reconciliation Commission calls to actions, the recommendations of the Royal Commission on Aboriginal People, multiple reports about child welfare reform, violence prevention. There's 231 calls to justice on the national inquiry. Hi, Melissa. You're amazing, too. Denying this is a form of abuse called gaslighting. And I really felt gaslit this week hearing, and I should say this, too. I got a little blog on Madame Premier. They're really a clothing line to try to encourage people to wear, clothes of gender inclusion and equity. Anyway, I got a little blog on there, and I talked about running with regrets, because I'm seeing, the new people that are here doing activist work. I see you. I'm proud of you. I'm honored you're doing that work. I absolutely passing the torch to anybody interested in actually advocating for these issues. But, a lot of people are going to tell you, oh, you should run. Oh, you'll be such a good person. But I promise you, these people who are blowing sunshine up your butt, they won't donate, they won't volunteer, and when push comes to shove, they won't endorse, because, oh, well, my friend over here is running, and I don't want to rock the boat, or, I promised them I would help, so, it would look silly. So these people are going to tell you, oh, no, you'd be such a great candidate. And I can tell you, here's an Indigenous woman who felt like I had the solutions, and when push came to shove, nobody supported me. So, I actually met a fellow when I was leaving this rally, and he said to me that he lived in Southview, and he got kicked off the Alberta Party board. And I know Nate Pint did, and publicly Jody Miller did as well, which sucks. On one hand, as parties, we're like, no, we totally want you to get involved. On the other hand, we're going to kick you out for so-called saying something controversial. Well, no wonder I'm not doing well. If you think what they're saying is controversial, no wonder it didn't support me. But it's that bigger picture that, it's, you have Dr. Zadie, who's trying to do good work in the UCP party. I have another friend who's a Two-Spirit person up north, and she's trying to do good work in the party. But it's hard. This is hard work. And people take what you say out of context, and before you know it, like, nobody wants to work with you, which is probably part of the reason why I have a podcast. Anyway, this gaslighting is hurting people in the parties too. Obviously, there's a lot of lateral violence in the parties, and that's what I was trying to say when I said that, this abuse is called gaslighting, because you see it in every medium. Our people are experiencing extreme racism because, I can't even get my voice out to social workers, nurses, police about, the issues that we're experiencing, even though it's public. Anyway, we have multiple reports that say the same thing. We have graves that say the same thing. Demand change from election platforms and politicians. If they don't understand colonialism, racism, privilege, sexism, they literally have zero business running. Like, this is all oppression. So if you don't understand oppression, then no wonder you don't understand why Native people are showing up at some of these things. Anyway, great article that I said out loud in episode 62 is Truth Before Truth, How Non-Indigenous Canadians Become Allies. Share that one over and over and over again. I want to continue by putting cultural safety into action so that you can create a safer space for Indigenous, people of color, and those with disabilities, LGBTQ2 plus to speak. Look at it as first aid for marginalization. You have to do something. Having good intentions is not enough. And this is what I was talking about when I said the little video that I put out about actually being anti-racism means you have to do something. Take action to make change. You have to speak out against racism. You have to ask questions of those with more understanding. So like for me, I follow Adora. I follow Desmond Cole. These are people that I learn from. I don't necessarily ask them questions though. Maybe I'll take that part out. But you got to find allies and create a support system for yourself to advocate for those culturally safe approaches. You know, take responsibility for your own learning. Read, reflect, ask questions to yourself. Do not expect this learning to come from marginalized people because the answers are there. I know they're all there, whether it's we're talking about this topic or this topic, it's all there. Take time for self-reflection. Beware of your assumptions and biases. Question everything that you've learned and take steps to actively disrupt those stereotypes because even for me, what did I say? 10 years ago, I would have been thinking, oh man, is Dave Chappelle ever racist? Because he throws around the N-word. But now that I understand oppression, and I understand I live under the Indian Act, and I'm called names by the Canadian government that are nothing but slurs, I can use those terms, but nobody else can. Non-natives can't. And use those terms. And now I understand why Dave Chappelle throws out the N-word like nobody's business. And I don't judge him, but I used to judge him. So those are my assumptions and biases that I had to unlearn. And I'm sharing that in the hopes that you'll go, those natives, they don't do anything. You'll question that and wonder why that is. And then you'll see, oh, the Indian Act prevents this. Oh, the Indian Act prevents that. So maybe they aren't so awful. Maybe you just had biases and assumptions that were laid in mistruths. Anyway, internalized and racism and lateral violence, such a good topic. Internalized racism, lateral violence, really great topics. I just shared something from, I should have brought it up, but it was Ali. She talked about, me being a native person. If I'm the person that says, no, Edmonton Eskimo name is totally cool, then I actually become the oppressor. For folks that are racialized and are like, no, police are totally awesome, when I can list you names of people who are like, there's no justice for them, you're being the oppressor. So anyway, lateral violence, internalized racism, these forms of violence really are because of the structure of racism. And you have to unlearn that. You have to unlearn that as an Indigenous person, as a Black person, as a marginalized person. We learned a lot in Voices about gay people not really dealing with their internalized racism. Anyway, you can Google this, racialequitytools.org. By Donna Bevins has lots of good resources, do's and don'ts for bystander interventions by the American Friends Service Committee. If you are witnessing public instances of racism, anti-Black, anti-Muslim, anti-trans, anti-Indigenous, you got to be a part of the solution. First, record this stuff. It's a lot easier to delete it later than it is to wish you would have had it on record. And this is what all of George Floyd was about. This is what Rodney King was about. We can go on and on about that. Anyway, just offer your support. Give people your card. Validate them with that. Try to sit with them if you need to. Whatever that looks like. Just be safe. And don't call the police. Because for a lot of us, that would make things worse. And we're seeing that. Welfare checks mean dead natives. So don't do that. Because chances are not going to be good. And we want to reduce that. And it's when I ran municipally, provincially, I've always talked about more mental health resources for first responders. I know that goes in one ear and one out the other because people think I'm just anti-cop, but I'm not. I'm for police accountability. Whatever. Don't escalate the situation. I said whatever because obviously my points when I ran went in one ear and out the other. And now we have new, folks who aren't as jaded as I am coming up and are being encouraged to run. And I hope to God that when people tell them that, they say, okay, show me the money and show me your volunteer time. Silence is dangerous, it communicates approval and leaves the victim high and dry. If you find yourself too nervous or afraid to speak out, move closer to the person being harassed to communicate your support. And teach your kids about accountability. There are age-appropriate anti-racism books. These kids are learning it from somewhere. So I know you're all thinking, but I don't put on a KKK hat. But by not talking about racism, that is inherently racist. So if you have little white kids walking around and they're like, we're not racist because I have a black friend, then you're not doing your job, parents. You're just not. If you're experiencing emotional distress and want to talk, call the First Nation and Inuit Help for Wellness helpline at 1-855-242-3310. It is toll-free, open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Violence is my everyday reality. Every Indigenous generation has faced it. That's why I started this podcast. Speak freely, without interruption, without tone police, without leadership shaming, without gaslight questions. Many people don't want to hear Indigenous opinion, but sure as fuck want to tell us theirs. Usually by people who don't know anything about Indigenous people, know nothing about colonialism, know nothing about the constant surveillance and microaggressions of Indigenous people dealing with internalized racism. So when you get your one, person who's like, yeah, those cops are fantastic, those become the very people who are our oppressors. They become the gatekeepers. They survive off the status quo. And then we have people who are really in their trauma. And they stop people from being able to do the good work and deplete the personal resources. Internalized racism, sexism is an everyday reality for Indigenous people. And that's why I needed this podcast. But I want to say thank you to my ancestors, my granny, my mom of what strength looks like through your example. I want to thank my dad for teaching me to be blunt and strong. My stepmom for showing me what a proud culture is through her Austrian roots and stepping up and teaching me to be a proud Calgarian. Just through her, I am a second-generation proud Calgarian. And I want to say thank you to my husband Darcy for producing and editing this show. On top of being my husband, my childhood friend, father of our child, and support down my journey of the Red Road, he has witnessed decades of racism and sexism, and we're unpacking it together. To our child, who we are blessed to learn from every day, I'm honored you chose us. You give me daily accountability to be a better, stronger person. My hope is my daughter and my family will be proud in the future of trying to discuss these present day issues in a way that they can understand down the road. Thank you again to my Patreon account supporters. You can go to my Native Calgarian account or to pledge and support. Thank you Adam, Alexandria, Beatrice, Ben, Beth, Brian, Kat, Celine, Christina, Crystal, Diana, Jenna, Jenny, Jocelyn, Judy, Karen, Kathy, Kenna, Leah, Marisa, Melissa, Natalie, Nathan, Rebecca, The Sprawl, Shara, Sharon, Tammy, Tiffany, Vanessa, and Veronica. Thank you all for signing up. If you did one donation or many and had to quit for financial reasons, just know that I appreciated your support. Again, $2 for parking. Hey, it helped. So thank you so much for that, because it allows me to speak about these things, even if some people didn't hear it. Where am I? If you value listening and can afford to give, thank you. For those who cannot afford to give but listen in, love to hear from you at nadayyc@gmail.com, or you can send in your comments and questions. And I also have a YouTube channel that you can subscribe to, podcasts on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher. And I want to end by giving side eye to those Calgary rabbits. You're lucky I'm not Tradish. And my beautiful cousin would say, or you'd be in my dish. Thank you all for listening.